Hey guys, so I'm getting ready to do a kitchen installation here and thought I would make a video on the process of doing this. So got my cabinets all laid out. These are actually ready to assemble cabinets. So these are cabinets that I've built over the last couple of days. They're all solid plywood cabinets, plywood sides, tops, bottoms, and backs, and then they're solid wood doors and face frames. So I've been real happy with those. I'll leave a link down below somewhere, so if you want to check out these ready to assembles. But anyway, I've got them all built. I've got them scattered all over the room here. But I'm just preparing to start installing the uppers. And you know, this is one of those things that the first time that I installed cabinets, I was kind of intimidated and wasn't sure. You know, it kind of seemed like something that, well, I'm not going to be able to do that. But luckily, I had somebody there to help me, and I figured out that it's actually not that bad. So if you're thinking about doing cabinets yourself, I'll try to make this video helpful for you. Try to give you a few tips that you know, that will simplify the process. So the first thing is, when you're doing cabinets, you want to install your upper cabinets first. And that might be a little, you know, contrary to what you might initially think. But the thing about cabinets is, if you install the bases first, then you're having to work over the top of them, and it makes things much more difficult. So do your uppers first, and it will make life much easier. A few things that I've done. So I've got my laser level here, and I'll go ahead and turn it on for you. First thing you need to do is get yourself a line around the room, and as I walk, that thing's super sensitive, it'll turn off. But so as you can see, I've made marks. I went around and I made marks everywhere. Okay, so the first thing I did, let me back up a second. This is an old house, and floors are not level. So I've already replaced, as you can see, a chunk of the floor over here where it was bad. But I've got a high spot over here. And so what I've done is I'm setting my line based off of this high spot. So I've come up 54 inches is basically this area right here. And that 54 inches is what I'm transferring all around the room. It's actually on this side, it's got me, I think, about a ½ inch higher. I'm at about 54.5, but I want to have a minimum of 54 inches. So you can do this, you know, you could just measure and you can use levels, but it's way easier if you have a laser level. And these things have a lot of good uses, so I'd highly recommend a laser level. So I've done that, and then I went ahead and I set this ledger board, and I don't know how well you can see it on the video, but as you can see, that laser is just touching the top of that ledger board. This is something else that makes life a lot easier when you're setting cabinets. So for this whole section here, I've got 4 screws in the wall, 2 on each board. And I'll just do a little bit of, you know, minor patch before I paint. So it's worth having a couple little holes to patch to have a ledger to set on, especially since I'm working by myself. It's almost, you know, it really is kind of mandatory. So make sure that you have nice straight boards. These are 1x4s. And I've been dragging this one around for a long time. It's got a lot of holes and marks and stuff in it. I've set a couple different kitchens with that one, and just make sure those are nice and straight. Get them lined up with the lines that you marked with your laser, and get those attached to the wall. And one other thing that I should mention too is I've already gone around the room and I've marked the stud locations. There, and all around the room. And I've kind of, you know, made marks up high here. This is the cabinet that's going to be above the microwave, so I made those stud marks high, and then back in the corner everywhere. Get yourself a good stud finder. This particular one, this Frankline stud finder, is the best one that I've used. I made a video on these things, but I'll leave a link down below so you can check that out. It's really nice because so as you're going along, it'll actually it shows you exactly where studs are. So works great. So get those marked out first, because you're going to want to know exactly where all your studs are before you start hanging your cabinets. The first cabinet that I'm going to do is this corner cabinet. And you always want to start in the corner, because everything obviously needs to be level across the room. And your corner, this one already, I can tell you, my level fit. Yeah. So as you can see from that bubble, the bottom of the cabinet is out considerably compared to the top. That's probably, that's like 3/8 of an inch or something. Again, old home. And then on this side, it is, it's really relatively close to plumb. Actually, so on this side, the top actually needs to come out about 3/16 of an inch or so. So it'll be important. I'll spend a lot of time getting this first cabinet leveled in the corner, because from there, obviously, you know, everything is just going to run out from there. So if your corner cabinet isn't nice and level, nice and plumb, I should say, if it's not plumb on both sides, in both directions, then as you start to run out, this little short section, it wouldn't matter much, but as I start to run out here, if this thing isn't plumb in the corner, you can imagine I'm either going to run uphill or I'm going to run downhill, and it will cause the same opposite reaction going in the other direction, if that makes sense. So I'm going to start working on this. I'll set up a camera so you can kind of see how this goes. As I go along, I'll show you I'll just show you this now. So I've got the ledger board, and if you've got 2 people, that's really adequate. Life gets a lot easier if you have some tools like these. If you're working by yourself, it's so much easier to have some tools to be able to support this thing. If you have a second set of hands, you know, that's one thing. But these are called the third hand, and these are, well, the third hand. This Fast Cap company makes several of these different supporting devices. Basically, this upper hand is, I think it's specifically made for cabinets. They extend from 28 to 60 inches, as you can see. So they're perfect to get to the 54-inch height, and they've got a trigger. So you just squeeze this trigger, and as you do that, it raises up, raises you up. So you've got rough adjustments here that are probably 8 or 10 inches, so you can extend or make it shorter, and then you can fine tune it by squeezing the trigger. So I'll be using those as I install this cabinet, and those are kind of a lifesaver. So anyway, let me put the camera on the tripod, and I'll show you how I get this first one installed. All right, so what I've done already, I did measure off and figure out where one of my studs land, and I actually pre-drilled the back of the cabinet. So I've got 1 screw ready to go. I've got some screws, I've got my drill, my impact driver, and I've got some shims ready too. And I already kind of estimated that I'm going to need about almost close to 1/4 inch out on the bottom. So I've got a shim set there in that cabinet already, so it's kind of ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and set it in place, and we'll see how this goes. Alright, so I'm on my ledger. This is where the third hand comes in so handy. A little tension on there, and then that'll just hold it right in place for me. All right, so this way I'm pretty good actually. This way, checking the level, I can see that the bottom needs to come out a little further yet. Make sure you have a good level that you trust. That looks good there. It's really close. Looks like the bottom could come out just a little bit on this side as well. Boy, we're really close right there. All right, I'm going to get ready to put my first screw in here. And that looks really good both directions. All right, so that first screw, the one that I had pre-drilled, was actually off by about an inch. So, but it still worked to hold everything in place. So as you can see, I'm being very, very particular about this thing being plumb and measuring off the cabinet. I really want to measure off the face frame because the face frame is what will make contact with the next cabinet coming up to it. And we're looking really good there. So I will see if I can get a couple more screws in here, and then I'll be ready to move on to the next cabinet. Okay, so before I move on to the next cabinet, one thing that I want to mention is I always try to get at least 4 screws in each cabinet. So this side over here, you can see where my screws ended up, which is great. This side over here, the stud is pretty much right on the edge of this cabinet. So if you end up in that situation, I've got these in at about a 45-degree angle, but by doing that, I was able to still get into the, the back material and then get into that stud. So sometimes you have to work a little bit to get to a stud, and the narrower the cabinet is, like these little 9-inchers, sometimes you just might not hit one. So we'll deal with that once we get there. But the corner's installed, it's nice and plumb in both directions, and now we can continue on from there. Before I put up this next cabinet, I'm actually going to do the one on this side next to the window. I've done a little bit of prep work, and so first of all, I found my next stud, and I pre-drilled holes and got screws ready to go in the cabinet. Hopefully I hit the right spot this time. And then I've also drilled through the face frame of this corner cabinet from inside, and it's a little bit hard to show you on a corner cabinet. But what I use to secure the frames is these trim screws. So you can see they're 2.5 inch. They're very small diameter. They're obviously white. They work great for screwing face frame to face frame, which is important because if you have any kind of a gap there, you'll see that, especially on white cabinets. So I've got that drilled, so I'm ready to put these screws in. I've got a couple of screws started in the back, and with any luck, it'll go up pretty easy from here. All right, so we get set in place. Of course, using my third hand as always. Get the bottom of the frames flushed up. Now I think in this one, what I'm going to do is, well, I'll go ahead. I was going to actually start a screw in the face frame first, but I actually don't have that bit over here. So I'm going to go ahead and put a screw in the wall. Okay, let me grab my bit for those trim screws. So it's a very small star drive bit. It's what these take. All right, so I have to have a little change of plans here. Because of the way the face frame is made in the corner cabinet, there's very little thickness here that I have that I'm actually running that screw through. So those screws are too long. So I'm gonna have to actually get some shorter ones. These are 2.5 inch. I probably need like 2-inch screws would be perfect. They'll work good for all the other ones because I have full thickness face frame to actually get a screw through. But on this corner cabinet, it's just a little bit too long. So what I'm gonna do for now is just secure it to the wall. And then I'll come back later and when I get some shorter screws and attach the face frames. And I'll have to do a little bit of adjusting there, but that will sit there for right now. All right, so I went ahead and hung this 12-inch cabinet on the right side of the corner. Same thing on that one over there. And again, same thing. I don't have the face frame secured yet because I need to get shorter trim screws, but it's sitting well enough that I think I can proceed. So the next one is actually the cabinet that goes above the microwave. And this one is, it's got, so you can't just set it on the ledger board, of course, because it's, because the microwave, this is an over-range microwave that'll be right here. And then the other thing is we've got an outlet up here that the microwave will plug into. So what I've done to locate this is I just took a level, laid it on top of that cabinet, brought it across, and I made a line. And then I used that line to measure down on the back of the cabinet here. And then I also measured off of the side over to mark where I need to cut off. Now, you know, you're marking, you've got a 1/4 inch here offset, you got a 1/4 inch here offset on the face frame, which makes it, you know, a little bit wider than what the actual cabinet is. Just to be on the safe side, to make sure that I don't make any mistakes, what I've done is, so first of all, I drilled a hole in the center of my mark that I believe should be the cutout. And then I've just stuck a piece of masking tape, as you can see over there. What I'm gonna do, just to double check my measurements, is I'm gonna throw the cabinet up, I'm gonna take the drill and pop a hole through this hole that I've already drilled, just to be sure that it's centered on the masking tape to make sure that it's, you know, that my measurements are accurate. Should mention too, I did pull the doors off the cabinet just to make it easier to hold, lighter, and just easier to manage. So I'm just going to hold this up flush up the top where it should be, and then have a little nail. I'm just going to poke a hole right there. Take my cabinet down, and there's my hole. So I'm actually a little bit off center. Good thing I did that. So I need to adjust over to the left of about a 1/2 inch. I mean, it doesn't have to really be perfect, because the outlet, the cover plate will cover it up, but I want it to be as close as possible. So I'm actually going to adjust my hole over about a 1/2 inch or so, and then I'll get out the jigsaw and I'll cut out the back of this cabinet. All right, my jigsaw's out in the trailer, but I had that oscillating cutter in here, so I went ahead and used that. So we'll see how this works. That outlet is a little bit higher on the wall than I would like. So where those So this is the hole that I actually meant to cut out. Those two holes there represent the top corners that I was going to cut. But those actually cut through that top support piece on there, and I didn't really want to notch that out. So I'll see if I can get the outlet in there. If I have to, I can always come back and notch that out later, but I think for now, I'll try it that way. All right, so I changed my mind and I did go ahead and cut out part of that top brace to expose more of that outlet. I did kind of a test fit and I could see that it was gonna be too difficult to get an outlet in there, so I just went ahead and cut it open. Not really a big deal. So I'm just gonna get that in place. And I missed on that one. Oh yeah, I need to go this way further. Now what I want to do is get some screws in this face frame. For it, I'm gonna loosen up these back screws just a little bit. So I got a little bit of play to work with here. And then I pre-drill. Make sure they're nice and flush. I'm going to take a clamp just to make sure you can maintain a nice, when you start running the screws in there, sometimes things like to move a little bit. So put a clamp on there real tight. Like so. Do that and you have perfectly flush face frames. No gaps. Looks good. All right, so on a small cabinet like this one, I haven't even put any screws in the back of the cabinet yet. I just do the face frame first because it's light enough, it'll hold itself there. Those are the most critical ones to get right anyway. So once those are in, This is another one of those that I have to get way over in the corner and try to hope that I can catch a stud, because there's nothing right behind it. Got it. All right. One more and this wall will be done. All right, final cabinet for this wall. So I've gone ahead and my legend board I ran out of length, so I shifted it over. I don't need it over in the corner any longer. You know, everything, generally your studs are all spaced on 16 inches, so I should be able to mark over 16 inches and find another stud. We'll see if that works. This porch out here was an addition at some point in time, and I know that it's not everything over here. Not everything was built 16 north centers. Actually, based on the stud finder, it actually looks like it's there, so I'm going to try this spot instead. Yep. Now I may actually on this cabinet, because it's a 36-inch wide cabinet, I might be able to get one more on that outside, and I'd like to do that if I can. Although it is actually sitting nice and flush to the wall over there, but I'll check and see if I can get one more on the outside. I'll do that too, but other than throwing doors on, that wall is complete. So as you can see, not too bad of a process. Now I'll come around. I have got two cabinets put on this wall over here. I'll go ahead and get those thrown up. And then we can go ahead and install the bases, which actually, because of unlevel floors, can be a little bit more of a challenge, but I'll get this all buttoned up and then I'll move on to the base cabinets. All right, so I've got all my upper cabinets installed. It's time to move on to the base cabinets. One thing that I would just point out when you're, if you've got things to go around like a window, uniformity is real important because your eye will catch differences pretty quickly. So the way that I set these up, I can't remember, I think this is really close to 5 inches. So this was the corner that I started in. I ended up being 5 inches to that window. So on this side, I established my first cabinet also 5 inches from the window. So it's nice and evenly spaced. Sometimes you can't always do exactly that, but it's really nice if you can because everything, you know, looks uniform and it's pleasing to the eye. So I've already started on the base cabinets. So what I had to do here, and I mentioned before, base cabinets in an older home can be a little bit of a challenge because oftentimes you have uneven floors. And that's exactly what I've got going on here. So this flooring here is flooring that I had replaced already. It was rotten. I tore it out and redid it. So I know that it's nice and level in both directions. And then as the room comes across, it actually humps up a little bit. So what I've done is I established the highest part of the floor, and that is over here in this corner right here. Actually, in this back corner of the cabinet is actually sitting, as you can see, flush on the floor. I shimmed the front just a little bit to get it level, but in any case, this is my highest part of the kitchen where the cabinets are going to be going. So from here, what I did is I got this cabinet set in place and I got it leveled up, and I found a line, and you can do this with a level. Again, I use my laser level just because it makes things so you know, quick and easy, and it's 100% accurate. But I took a line off the top of this cabinet, and it's real faint, I don't know if you can see that, but I took a line all the way across the room. I haven't drawn a line yet, but I've got marks over here where the top of the cabinet should land. And in doing so, what I ended up needing was an additional ½ an inch on the new floor, the new subfloor that I put down. I need a consistent ½ inch all the way around. And so I had some OSB laying around. Rather than having, you know, ½ inch is a tall stack of shims. So rather than doing that, the quickest and easiest way for me in this particular kitchen was I just ripped some ½ inch OSB and threw that down, and it got me right to the height that I needed. And because I already know that this floor is nice and level all the way across, I can get away with doing this pretty easily. So, you know, there's lots of different ways to level up a floor. This is what I'm doing. As you can see, I've got kind of an assortment of shims and stuff going on down here to get me to level. I've got my corner cabinet set in place. I don't actually have it secured to the wall yet, but I do have, as you can see the bubble there, I do have everything leveled across. So we're you know, in good shape there. So the next cabinet going in, and when I ordered my cabinets, these are, what are these? This is a 36-inch cabinet, 36-inch cabinet. Upper's a 9, so then I've got a 9-inch lower cabinet that's going to go up against the range here. So I'm going to get that in place. I've already got sort of some shims worked out roughly where it needs to be. Just like before, I've pre-drilled so I can put some trim screws in through the frame, and then I'll get it attached to the wall. I think there is a stud that I can get back there. And then from there, I'll go ahead and get my corner secured. And this is going to be the first time that I actually am going to need to have a filler strip. So the way this works out, well, I'll show you, but when I get this 9-inch cabinet in here, this line is going to be a straight line. It's going to be nice and plumb. And that's what the range will come up against. On this side, so the microwave, this is a 30-inch opening, standard 30-inch opening for a microwave. I need a 30-inch opening for my stove, for my range. And so what I'll have to do is take a filler strip, and I'll actually cut a filler strip so that it fills in the gap there, so that when you slide your stove in, it comes out flush to the edge of the stove. So I'll show you how I do that here in a little bit, but that'll be the next step. So I'll go ahead and get this little cabinet in place. I'll get my corner screwed in, and then I'll figure out how wide of a filler strip that I need to rip. All right, so moving forward here, I've got the Lazy Susan secured. Basically just one screw in that side, and then the way these corner cabinets are made, sometimes you don't have anything on this side to actually screw to. So as you can see, what I did is I just screwed a 1x4 to the wall, and then I ran a screw through the side of the cabinet into that 1x4, so it's secured there. So that's good, that's nice and level. So now the next step is I need to get the sink base centered on the window, and I want to have it just as close to center as possible. And it works out pretty good, actually. So the filler strips that I have, anytime you do kitchen cabinets, you're going to have some filler strips. I was fortunate in my wall cabinets, I didn't have to do any filler strips, which is actually probably pretty unusual, but in the base cabinets I'm going to have to. So what I've done is I've determined the center of my sink base, and I've lined that up with the center of the window, and then based on that I determined what I need for filler strips. And so what I'm doing is adding a filler strip on this side of the sink base. Basically I'm adding a filler strip on either side of this drawer base is what I'm doing. So you might be wondering what's going on here, and that was because I messed up. So I didn't order enough filler strips. So this piece over here, I ordered 3 filler strips. I've got one already cut that's going to go here, which will actually fill in next to the stove to get me my 30-inch opening. And then once I came over here, I realized that I only had 1 more filler strip. So I'm not sure how that happened. I should have had 3, but I only had 2. So in order to keep this process moving forward, because I want to get my my countertops measured, what I've done is I just took a couple of blocks. So these are the drop-offs. When you get these filler strips, they're usually longer than you need. So this is a drop-off of this one that I cut, and then I just took another 1 by and I ripped it down to 3 inches so that it would be, you know, so that I could have an even space here. So I'm going to just temporarily screw those into place. That way I can keep moving forward with the cabinets, and then I'll order another filler strip. When that comes in, I'll come back and I'll take these temporary blocks out and I'll put the permanent in. So that's what's going on there. So anyway, I've already cut this down to 30 inches, which is what the face frame measures. I've already got some holes pre-drilled and some finished screws preset in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get this filler strip screwed into place. And then next step is going to be getting holes drilled for my plumbing in the sink base. Okay, update. So as you saw, I got holes drilled for my plumbing and brought those up. And incidentally, the easiest way to drill these holes is with a hole saw. And I actually needed a 2.5, and I didn't have one with me today. I only have a 2 1/4. So I ended up, what I did was actually use a smaller one, poked a hole through. This is the one that I used for my supply lines. I think this is maybe like a 1 inch or something. But anyway, for my drain line, I just drilled a hole, and then I just used a jigsaw and opened it up with that. So that worked just fine. And my best suggestion for this is just measure, measure, measure before you cut. I was fortunate. I was able to actually pull my supply lines loose down in the basement. And then I went from the basement and I just used a long, skinny pilot hole bit and drilled up through the bottom of the cabinet, and that way I was able to very easily locate where those were at without having to actually measure. But my drain line, I did have to measure that out, and just take several measurements before you cut. I've messed those up before. One other thing that I would mention too, so as I'm going along here, I'm just securing the face frame. I'm not putting any screws in the back of the cabinet yet, and the reason that I'm doing that, I don't know how well I'll be able to show you this on camera, but this wall is in no way flat, and this isn't really uncommon, again, especially in an older home. So my level, this is 6.5 foot level, so I'm touching on that side, I'm touching on that side, and I've got a good gap. That's probably a 3/8 of an inch gap in the back of the level. So this wall, you know, bows out here. So I want to make sure that I get the front of my cabinets nice and straight. And once I get everything lined up here, what I'll do is hold a straight edge, and I've got them pretty well straight right there. And then from there, I'll make sure I shim out the back. So as you can see how, you know, that's a large space back there. So I want to make sure I have the front of the cabinets nice and straight. We'll shim that out. the countertop and the backsplash will fill in the back, and you won't know that the wall's not straight back there. So moving along here, I mentioned this before, but I did cut another filler strip for my where the oven's going to go, to have a 30-inch hole. And now the next step is I need to leave a 24-inch gap for the dishwasher. That's where that's going to go. And then there'll be another set of one more cabinet on the other side of the dishwasher. So I'll get that laid out now. All right, so after spending a bunch of time making sure that everything was nice and level, front to back, I also, as I said before, I double checked to make sure that the face frames are flush going all the way across. Big shims in the back of the cabinet, but that's okay. Oh, and I also installed my filler piece to go next to the stove, so now that'll go up and line up with the cabinet above. So I'm ready to order order countertops. Got to get this filler piece, but that's no big deal. I can throw that in anytime. So that's the process, guys, for installing a kitchen. So, you know, I'm by no means a professional carpenter. I've done a handful of kitchens, but it's not that bad, really. I mean, it's one of those things that you've got to take your time, and you got to make sure you have a good level. You have to make sure everything is nice and level and plumb and straight. And as long as you do that, take your time. Installing a kitchen is doable. You know, it's definitely something that if you have somebody who's done one before, you know, that's the way to do it, really, if you can, because that'll give you a lot of confidence to make sure you're not making any mistakes. But it's not that bad. It can be done. So I hope you guys found that video helpful. I'll leave a link down below, some of the tools that I've used, just in case you're interested. You know, may or may not be helpful to you, but I'll try to leave some links down below. So if you enjoyed this, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel if you're interested in seeing more videos like this one, and we'll see you in the next one.